release on PS4, so it seemed like the right time to do it. And everything else, I think I'll leave up to Sam to go through.
Gonna start.
Are we ready for our official beginning?
Sure, do it.
No.
Do it fast.
Give us 30 seconds.
Okay.
We're running.
Okay.
Boop. Yep. I see waves. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
John. All right, welcome. All right, hi, I'm Sam, pronouns he, him. This is a game that actually means a lot to me. It's one of the games that first, opened my eyes as to what, video games could be. I remember playing it in 2005 and never finishing it because the controls were a little dodgy and I could never get past one part. So I was happy to come back to it on PS4. They ironed out a few of the control issues that I had the first time around. It was a lot easier. So I wanted to approach this almost because it's so heavy on visual storytelling, I wanted to approach this almost as a combination travel slideshow and visual archaeology, because that's almost what you have to do with these the Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, Last Guardian games is there's maybe 20 lines of dialogue and the rest is just music and visuals and environments, and I think that's really fascinating to me. So since we couldn't get the PS2 working, I'm going to show you just the opening cinematic here, just so in case you haven't played it, you get sort of the vibe that the game is going for. All right, let's see if this works. Make it big. No, make it bigger.
as you hick. Our yet for all. Could you be cool? You solo iron do. You little cock. I use you la cordoloya. Olik, Olazulham, cause. Il zazeri kua zoko. I'm no screwed. Laomism wop. Was you a dealers also? Few houses is built. Ikola kizado you lola. Islis was I Ao mizuki you are la quicker. You could was, you dreaming. I wasn't cool. You own you.
Don't for Alula. Ostiu Halwa Wuki Waikwa. Ujis Yazu Zudoko was Nordekyo Wutia.
I will answer you. I will be you reason. Darling, cute.
Is Kimku. It is all of you equal. It's not ours amusement. Alu Diklik if the least to is. I'll bet.
I was guilty call. No certain case, no court. On those around us. I will continue. Everyone was no source. Everyone able. Everyone control.
You do. You bet Sanada.
Who I won't do was no source. Oh, you know, you and Bill cry outside. Was you and Bill Colossus, you are your lands, Kaldu Mukodo.
Oran.
You are the was not little, you know. You are our street.
Oran. You do new.
No cooler. It's where arrow I would journey. Arrows, you ever become. Dance around here, I understand.
All right. We're gonna stop right there. That's the sort of only exposition you get in about half the dialogue in the game. So, like, what can we sort of infer about, like, this world, like, its themes, like, its history, just from, like, looking, like, watching, like, this cinematic? Like, what are your, like, first impressions of, like, what this story is going to be and, like, the setting? Anyone?
You're not supposed to be there.
Yep. It's got curses and forbidden magic all written all over it.
Nobody's been there in ages.
Yep. Everything's kind of dilapidated.
So I don't really know if this is true or not, but I think that the creator made their own like language for the dialogue, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
As far as, like, world building.
Yeah, and I believe it is shared in like Eco, or if you're from the Midwest like me, Ico. I don't know about The Last Guardian. I haven't played that yet, but it's its own language.
Those are two things. Yeah, Last Guardian has the kind of like made up language as well. I think this version, the dialogue is a little different in the intro.
It sounded a little.
I think they literally do call in the original version. They literally call it the Forbidden Land. It's like the Forbidden Land, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that line isn't there here, but yeah, it's the same mood. Like, you're not supposed to be here.
Yeah, it's interesting. At the same time, these are these forbidden lands, and you're alone in these ruins, but this voice is coming down on high, like in a column of light. It's a very churchy atmosphere. There's bells. It's very like gothic, so it's still like kind of ambiguous, like what force has just kind of contacted you and what sort of a deal you have just made. Which is interesting. I know the creator said that that this is all based on like dreams and like ideas he's had from childhood, but there is still like this kind of undercurrent of like religious like imagery and stuff that's really interesting. So you are this hero named Wander. The girl's name is Mono, and your horse's name is Arco. Some of this is revealed throughout the story. Others, in Japan, it was released as Wander in the Colossus, so you knew the hero's name. But I don't know if like Mono's ever named outside of like the game manual. So it's like everyone like, and even the Colossi you meet, they aren't officially named. So it's like everything's very ambiguous. All right, let me get to. Get the music going here a little. So I want to get the soundtrack in here because it's very important to like setting the mood. It's like a really beautiful soundtrack. And so So this is where we came in. We've been contacted by some being or beings known as Dormine, which sort of has the root word of sleeping, so it's some sort of sleeping power.
It's also Nimrod in reverse, which is another biblical reference.
Uh-huh.
One of the first kings of, I think, written history in Mesopotamia, who was like known to be like half divine or like a half demon.
Yeah,
I
so...
think he was also famous for being a hunter.
So we've got kind of like a pretty classic hero story. We've got a maiden. She was sacrificed for her fate. She's trying to bring her soul back.
Oh, that's Gilgamesh.
I think Nimrod was a hunter too, because the reason that Nimrod is used as an insult now is because in like a Bugs Bunny cartoon at one point he mockingly calls Elmer Fudd that.
Yeah.
It's like weird trivia, right? Yeah.
And so everybody misinterpreted that joke.
I don't know why I know that.
All right, so yeah, and so we're on this journey to defeat 16 Colossi, to bring back the Maiden's soul, and this is the very second I got a hold of the controls on the horse, and I remembered how difficult it is, and I ran into a wall and got lodged there. I found myself having to make sort of like a claw when I was playing on the PS4, because like you control the reins with L and you press the arrow to steer the horse forward, but you also have to trigger the sword's light with R1, and you have to control the camera with the right stick. So I found myself making sort of this thing and having to take frequent breaks because of hand pain. So that's just... So it's a little jarring going from that super fluid cinematic to actually controlling the thing. It's still much better than I remember it being on the PS2, but still there's a little bit of that clunkiness left behind, which I honestly find charming. It's... So, yeah, you raise your sword to the light, and it guides you towards where the first Colossus is. And when this thing enters the screen, it almost looks more architecture than creature. Like, I think the voice said, like, hewn from stone. And here and you just kind of get the scale of it. And so your task is to hit the weak points of these creatures, climb them, stab them in these glyphs they have. A bunch of black ooze comes shooting out of their foreheads, and this first battle took me about like 2 minutes, but I forgot about this next part. The black ooze comes back to you, and it's very heavily implied your character is just killed. Like, whatever was inside this creature is now inside you, and you collapse and head into this interesting tunnel. So we've got a lot of already like an establishing theme of like death and rebirth. You come back to the temple, and there is this shadowy figure standing over you, and the first idol cracks, and the voices promptly they don't acknowledge that you just died, or what they're just like, your next foe is in this valley here. And so these are just some... And we've got this guy. I want to show this guy in action just so you get a sense of some of the scale here. Second Colossus boss fight, PS3, yeah. This is a good one just to get the some of the gameplay, because most of this game you are just going from point A to point B, and then you have these very intense, large-scale boss fights in between here. I'm going to... So yeah, you use your Sword of Light to pinpoint the weaknesses. See, this thing's absolutely gigantic, and they're all very like different in shape, but they all have like kind of distinguished, like they all have commonalities. They've got these sort of like leathery bodies covered in like this grassy fur, and just like projections that like look like architectural forms, and then these just like glowing blue eyes that when angered turn bright orange. You can see this person's aiming for the glowing weak spots on the feet here. And it's almost somewhat like of a puzzle game. Each like giant has like one or two tricks you get to like this. Well, yeah, and there's some of that platforming, that really tight platforming. Lots of sliding, lots of falling. A little bit of that. So yeah, sometimes, you know, there's some like collision stuff that takes you out of it a little bit, but mostly the animation's really fluid. And you can see they're trying to figure out how to get to the, well, see, this is good because this is basically how I played starting out before. Like, there's a learning curve with these controls, especially with like the bow and arrow. There's no like aim assist. It's all manual. Now they're just going for it. There, yeah. Get it when he rears up. When I played this, I did this for like 10. Yep. Got him.
I have to say that the PS4 has a much better UI than PlayStation 2.
It is. It's
The PS2 user interface was hideous.
Yeah.
It was like a big pink circle. It was huge.
Yeah, we still got the papyrus font, but it's a much more streamlined UI, definitely.
Also, in the PS2 version, the camera would aim at whatever the momentum of your body was taking you towards. So if you were on top of this thing, the camera would aim wherever he was going, not where you were running on it.
Yeah, in this one, I still had some camera problems because it does this thing, and I remember like other games like Brutal Legend doing this, where it tries to find the mathematically most like aesthetically pleasing camera position. Like when it's still, it just sort of everything kind of floats to like that golden ratio So, which is a little disorienting when you're trying to mount this thing. You can see this guy's angry. He wants you off. So you've got the glowing glyph, which sort of echoes the symbol on Wander's like little tabard. So you're breaking some sort of seal. Yep, you just keep stabbing him. They usually have 1 or 2 weak spots, and each one's activated by proximity to the sword, so you gotta go climbing around on them a little bit. And now I'd like to know, like, what part in the game did you start to feel bad?
Oh, the first time.
The very first time. It's pretty soon, right? Where you get an inkling that maybe what you're doing is a little unethical. But if you notice, a lot of them, and I think there's one it's a little more evident, and especially the first one, he doesn't even notice you until you come up to him and start waving your magic little sword. He's just wandering. And so here we are. This is going through the tunnel of light. And every time you go through this tunnel, you start to hear like snippets of like a voice and moaning, and it's never translated, but so now we've got 2 specters hovering over us. And another item falls. And you wake up or resurrect. And then the voices give you your next assignment. So yeah, it's a lot of repetition, a lot of moving from point A to point B, but let me pull this up here. Full screen. Yeah, so and then the third Colossus you visit is in this. It almost looks like what does this architecturally look like? It's like this, almost like a table, like a big old table. Got some chains hanging off of it.
Looks like a stage, kind of.
Kind of a stage, some sort of, yeah. It's almost like a Colosseum, and then we meet the knight. And you just like sort of see the scale of these guys in this. And you see every time you die, your wounds sort of like echo their final wounds. And you sort of gather more of these specters around you. Now this is one of my favorite boss fights. You've got sort of these like cairns or barrows, whereas like the and the architecture style here, this is almost like Roman or something. Like it's very Spartan. And then you have these almost like English like barrows, and you have this graveyard like guardian, and again you die. And let's see. And this was interesting. And after I killed this Colossus, I was like, what if I go back? Does the Colossus just disappear? And it doesn't. It sort of gets reabsorbed into the earth, and you can like then go through sort of a match plus mode if you want to, and you can replay the battle. But I thought it was interesting that it sort of illustrates how these are just like creatures, like sort of manufactured creatures, like because you go back like immediately and they've already sort of like turned just to earth and ash. So these are almost more like vessels than living things, is like the impression I got of it. What did you think sort of like the nature of like the Colossi were about like at this point?
I thought it was shocking how quickly the Earth took them back. I mean, that looks like a mound more so than...
Yeah, it looks like
thought.
one of the cairns right over here.
Yeah, I always just saw them as like the Forbidden Land and the Colossus are like one. They're all one and the same, and like whatever energy in this land is possessed by them, like they become part of that again, when they go down. Mm-hmm. Also, I had a comment. You said I never put together that like you would die like after each round. I always just like sort of saw it as like absorbing the life, but like it makes like going through that tunnel. It's interesting. Like you kind of collapse and the screen goes black, and then the tunnel comes, and then you reappear.
Yeah, it may not be like
you're worse for wear every time you do it. You keep getting more decrepit almost as you go. But yeah, I never thought about
I think when
resurrecting almost every single time.
Yeah, I think when I played it originally, I didn't put that together, and it may not be like a literal death, but it is like a symbolic death, because everything goes black. You go through the tunnel of light, you hear voices, and you're back in this church, and the pillar of light speaks to you. So there's just sort of some like birth, sacrifice, rebirth going on.
Right, it's almost like I always thought you were overwhelmed almost by all this energy just going into you, and you sort of collapse from exhaustion because it's just so much power. Like this giant creature, all of its force just kind of transfers to you, and you just your body is almost overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's I think they leave it a little bit ambiguous. I think later on they kind of show like that your body sort of like is lifted up and teleports back to the church every time, which seems time consuming, but it's as much as they deny their symbolism in these games, it's definitely there. So at this point, when you're traveling around the overworld, there really isn't much in the way of native wildlife or life of any sort, like outside of plants. There are hawks, there are these white doves that start appearing around Mono. Like for every Colossus you kill, there's another white dove. And then there's these little salamanders, and you can kill them and take their stamina, which I did not get when I played this in 2005, because again, it's just like, it's a collectible, but the game, like, it's not necessary to finish the game. There's not a little like fairy that's like, hey, collect salamander tails to get stamina, which is what they do. They build up your stamina bar, and it does help, but you're just sort of left to take it or leave it. It's very...
I think my experience with that was like the tower and finding the part on the back that you could scale, but you just don't have enough stamina. And finding that, if I kill one of these and eat the tail, or like take the tail, then my stamina gets a little bigger. And so it was like, alright, wait a second, like if I keep doing this over and over and over again, it wasn't necessarily like to beat the Colossus, but it was to explore around the world.
No, yeah,
that was the
No, it's neat how it just sort of like lets you figure that sort of out on your own. It doesn't hold your hand, but it also like it's not 100% necessary. Every single Colossus you kill, your character, I don't know if you notice, like does get stronger and gets more stamina and like on his own, just probably based on the power he's consuming. But it does help. Yeah.
So the hint of there's two types of salamanders, and some have like glowing tails.
Yeah, those are the real good ones.
Yeah, but it's the same glow as your sword. It's the same glow as the Colossi weak point. So like using that visual symbolism that you've kind of started to learn.
Yeah. And even the plain ones, like they stick out on the landscape because there's nothing else really running around. They've got little glowing blue feet, so.
But you also see them climbing on things.
Yeah.
And stamina is mostly like grip strength. So there's the idea of like you're assimilating their power to hold on to things in the same way you're kind of like assimilating the spiritual power of the Colossi when you defeat them.
Yep.
And they're all, like, I know in the PS2 version, they were only on the save point temples that you'd find throughout the land.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's usually where you'd find like the blue-tailed ones, like the super-powered ones.
I found that, like, in the PS2 version at least, the black-tailed ones didn't do anything for you. Maybe they gave you your health back, but they didn't increase your stamina. Just the ones that you found on the save points.
I am not certain if that's the same in the PS4 version. All I know is I hear the same boom noise when I eat one, and I assume it's doing something similar. Oh, yeah, John.
There's a question.
Yep, back.
I've noticed that there isn't much life in this land. Everything we see is birds and salamanders, and in the end, I think there was a deer or something. And I wondered why that might be, because that land seems pretty sustainable for forms of life living across.
It's implied you eventually as you go through the world, you see bigger and bigger constructions, and the light even refers to forgotten cities and ruined cities, and it's implied that something very, very big and cataclysmic went down, because most of these places are in ruins, and you see like actually just huge, not just like regular like time and nature taking the buildings back, but there's like holes like ripped through these giant structures. So it's implied there's almost like either the beings or people who used to live here all died, or they left, and this is just the only life that sort of survived or stayed behind. It's like birds who can freely travel, and these like little sort of magic almost look like they're infused with like the same magic like you said as the Colossi, so maybe they've been getting along just feeding off like the energy of the land. But I think they the creators did say like they just think it keeps the game from feeling cluttered, and it sort of adds to the isolation and loneliness. Like there's really nothing you can, like there's fish, there's birds, but there's just like nothing for miles and miles, and it just sort of adds to the sense of loneliness that sort of goes throughout the whole game. And so at this point, like you start noticing, like as you're traveling around, right where you kill a Colossus, these big pillars of light creating storm clouds around them are forming around the countryside. And that's when I sort of, like when I first played this, started figuring out that something I was doing was bad. Because like you're basically ripping holes in the world. Let's see, and scattered throughout the game are these little shrines, and this is like the only hint of like religion we kind of get, that Wander somehow recognizes like these figures at these shrines as something to pray at, and kneels, and it's like a little like save point. So
Dorman outright tells you that you can save there, yes?
Yeah, they don't let you figure that out.
Okay.
They're like, oh, if you pray here, we'll heal you and save your spot. But that also, like, led me to believe that, and based on, like, the pattern on his tabard and the fact that he found this ancient sword, that there's something tying him or his people to this land. That he, like, recognizes this figure. He has the sword. The pattern on his tabard sort of matches some of the sigils on the Colossi. That there's some sort of, like, cultural connection between him and this world.
Also, like, as soon as he comes there, he's aware of, like, the myth surrounding the world, so I would also think that bolsters the...
Yeah, like, there's, like, some sort of story passed down. The mask you see in the beginning is, he comes in later, but it's, sort of like a lord or like a storyteller or a priest that he hears this story around like the campfire one night and steals away with the girl and tries to pull off this forbidden spell.
Well, there's also the fact that she was sacrificed, so
yeah,
that also implies religion.
Yeah, and that there's some connection between his world and this world where he is now. See, there's also fruit you can collect, and that increases your health bar. Let's see. So, we have our next area. Oh, this is one of my favorites. It's the Avian Colossus. And you can see it's this sort of spire, and it's very intimidating.
Sam, I have a question. And then
Yeah.
also somebody had a hand back here.
Yes.
You mentioned that you felt like the Colossi looked very constructed. Did that make you feel less bad about killing them? Like, you mentioned you started feeling like, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong when like the beams of light, the pillars of light went into the sky, where other people were like, I felt that right away. Just like maybe saying like, oh, maybe these things are like golems or automatons, like lessen the sting of hurting them for.
It's, I don't know. It's kind of a mix. I mean, the way I felt is like I felt they were constructs, but they were organic, like partially organic constructs, and they behaved sort of like animals do, like instinctually, like they, like if you jumped on their shoulder, they'd try to shake you off, like, or like this bird, when you hook onto its wing, it tries to like flip over and like flip you off. Like they've got sort of like living reactions. I just got more of the feeling that they were sort of less like living things and more like created to protect something. So like that interfering with them was maybe a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I thought about this game a lot. I'm almost like starting to put the chronology together now.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I never thought about, and you brought it up when you brought up the prayer statue, is that so whenever this bad thing happened was a long time ago, but Wanderer recognizes them. Mm-hmm. So his people, whatever the religion of his people is, predates this cataclysm.
Yeah.
Like it isn't formed entirely from the cataclysm and the sealing of Dormant, right? But and it's good you picked it, and the thing of the pattern of his cloak is the weak point on the Colossus. So his people after that, the iconography of their religion is based on the cataclysm of Dormant, right? Mm-hmm. So whoever his people are, they sealed Dormant into these Colossi. Yeah. You know, and that's why the symbolics are the same. It's like, even if we don't ever go to the Forbidden Land, we don't talk about the Forbidden Land, like, we
still know how to draw this pattern, and we're going to pass it down, and, you know, eventually, like, he's going to recognize it.
Yeah, and this is, like, the most important event in our history is the sealing of Dormant. Mm-hmm. So, like, we have to continue this symbol. You have to, like, remember this symbol.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
thinking on that, I just thought like, didn't he stole the sword in the beginning too? Like that's their like sacred weapon that they know that this can like defeat the Colossi, and it's like this very special thing that's like part of their religion. It's part of like the whole sealing and the whole mythos of this land, and like the people who are chasing him too. He's like gonna do wrong in this land by using that sword.
Yeah. So it does imply that it's like whether the people that were in this land survived or not, like their traditions and their culture did survive on the sort of other side.
When Eco, you fight the shadow guys in the beginning with like a regular sword, right? So this contrasts this with like he's got the special sword that they dissipate when he shines the light, which sort of like folds into the game's philosophy of like no henchmen, no minions, right? It's just boss fights.
Yeah.
So like they're like, here's a weapon where you don't have to deal with.
You don't have to.
We assume that these spirits, I guess, are like at other places, not just like in the temple.
It's implied because more of them keep appearing around you as you resurrect, that each one sort of represents one of like the spiritual energy that was in like a Colossus. Now the ones in the beginning, I'm not sure, they may have just been like you said, like minions, and he blew them away, like no problem. But the ones that start accumulating around him are like the gathering power that he's sort of releasing.
Well, there is the fact that by the end...
I know, I spent most of my time in this game just taking screenshots. It has a very robust photo view, and like I said, this is one of the shrines, and I feel like they were just basically put there for you to climb to the top, and it will just arrange a beautiful picture for you to take. Yeah.
I was gonna say on that, I like the thing you said about like the thing I hadn't thought about so much about what was the past civilization there.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing, when you have the photo of the spire approaching the winged Colossus, that's like the first time. Yeah, it's a couple back from this one.
Yeah.
This is like the huge difference of the PlayStation 4 version, is instead of just like shapes and a geometric thing, like this really starts to look like a place that is ruined.
Yeah.
And you can ascribe this. You're talking about like the architecture and the archaeology, and it's like, oh yeah, that was a chapel. That feels like a chapel instead of just.
It does. It's got sort of the wrought iron.
Yeah.
Gates, like the arches. Yeah. And it's like such a weird, dreamy mix of like architectural styles. Like, yeah, it's got like Gothic arches, and then it's got almost like these like Mayan like engravings on the side, and it's like almost like Roman columns and like tile and stuff. And so it really adds to like the dreamlike quality, which I think they were going for. Here you even have these look like bridges. Yeah. And here even and then it almost has like sort of a Zelda thing where there are different biomes, and in the desert biome the architecture almost turns Egyptian. This looks very much like, an Egyptian tomb carved into a mountain. Just more pictures. Something I also wanted to talk about in the game that's so like sparse and can feel kind of like empty. There are these little emergent moments that you don't expect that really bring it to life. Like this is there's a little oasis here on the edge of the desert, and you get off your horse, and you're shooting down fruit from the tree, and you turn around and your horse is drinking from this little pond here, and just like it shows that just like if you like strip everything down and just add these like little touches, it makes it feel just as alive as Breath of the Wild or like Far Cry, where there's like a million things happening all the time. Just like this little moment, like is kind of where like the world sort of came to life for me or something, because you don't expect it. You just turn around and it's like, oh, he's drinking. Oh, he's like a little living thing. Let's see. Yeah, yeah. There's this guy, and this is the first thing I saw when I think they mentioned he's like he's sort of like a prisoner in this hall. It almost looks like a gladiatorial ring, and he punches really hard. That's his power. Yeah, so it's just like, and then then you go into this jungle area, and it almost looks like ruins you'd see in like the jungles of Cambodia or Honduras. And this almost, I believe it's like an ancient dam or something. So whoever these people were, they were extremely advanced. Like, they were creating these huge monuments. You can see they have these spires. And this is another one of my favorite boss fights. It's like this giant electric catfish. I'm gonna show a little bit of this and get some video going. Can we go one time? Exit full screen. Yeah, here we go. So, because they don't have proper names, so it's always like water boss. Sure.
They have those made, yeah.
Yeah, they have like the made up like sort of like Latin names, but I think those were fan created just so people didn't have to be like, okay, the 4th Colossus, 5th Colossus. All right, we're not going to look at this ad.
You can skip it.
Is it going to let us? Oh, there we go.
Shadow of the Colossus on PS4 is back.
What's up, gamers? Let me see if he just shuts up. Oh, what's up? Yeah. Yeah, we're just gonna use the audio I got here. Sorry, Game Riot. You have a beautiful voice. So we're just gonna, yeah, he's gonna run around here for a while, isn't he? Gonna shoot some lizards. So you can see like 90% of this game is just traveling. And you have this very, very sparse map. Are we here? So yeah. Get in the water, buddy. There we are. Now, just like based on, I really like how this game, it's not like go for its glowing weak point, but like just looking at this creature, like how do you think, like what would your strategy be to defeat it? So we've got this like lard fishing. Well, you're pretty close, because to get his attention. Yeah, guess what the bait is? It's you. So here he comes. And you gotta grab, yep. Get down. He's gonna take you on a ride. No, this like gave me like a lot of anxiety because I used to get anxious playing Zelda 64 when Link has to dive for long periods of time and he starts making very realistic choking noises. This sort of awakened that in me. I also have a fear of heights, which was awakened a lot by scenes in this game. But yeah, just the designs on these things, it's absolutely beautiful.
Memory might not serve me correctly. See, I know you're supposed to hit those antenna there. I think in the original they're blue, in the same like blue everything is. It's interesting that they made the choice to make them orange here.
Yeah, I wonder, because it does go against, like, it may have literally just been aesthetics.
Yeah, I mean, it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
It might have been to dissuade the users from thinking that there were weak points. Oh.
Yeah, because it's not, you don't actually hit the thing. If you do that, you'll get shocked.
Yeah, he learned that right there. So yeah, maybe it's like, yeah, it's a sign. It's like, that's what you avoid, what you want.
Is that blue spot?
Yeah. So you're gonna, like, yeah. And you think this is going to be like very straightforward, like that this is just like, alright, we figured this out. This is easy peasy. This guy's going down. And then he does something like you said, like, just like, you know, a fish that's been hooked, it heads down and it tries to drag you with it and shake you off, and you just have to, like, if you stay there you'll drown. You just have to let go. So it's like, even when it looks like it's going to be super straightforward and easy, like, they have these little behaviors that emerge that just throw you off a little bit. Okay, let's get towards yeah, there's no glamour in this. This is very just like messy work that your character is doing. It's, you're just stabbing it in its little head over and over. Oh, he really likes that. He wants to take it. See, that's that camera mode. Yeah. Kill shot.
I was gonna ask, the camera movement from like human point of view to more whatever axiometric, does that change automatically, or do you do it manually?
You can control it a bit with the R stick, but it does sort of zoom in and stuff on its own. It's got its own little agenda. Sometimes you feel you're fighting against it, but sometimes it sets up really pretty shots.
When you stab it, as you pull your sword back, it zooms in.
Yeah. It just, adds to the impact. So I don't mind, like, the wonky camera. I think it adds to it more than it subtracts.
I also think the combination of like fur and stone is really interesting, just as far as like enemy design.
I always thought it was grass.
Is it?
It's a little vague, but I always thought it was a plant or like moss or something.
Yeah, it's almost, it's got...
I mean, it's not clearly one or the other.
Yeah. It's, like everything else in the game, kind of mysterious and ambiguous, and like, it's organic, but constructed, but...
I remember when I first played the game, and then I listened to the soundtrack, and I remember this song, and I don't remember where it was in the game.
I'm trying to, was it one of the air, or like, here? Or maybe the desert?
I think it's the desert.
I think it's, that was another one that...
This is
Yeah. I was like, well, there's fish surfing. One of the extreme. There's also hawk surfing, which I never figured out.
Oh, I figured that out.
You can jump on a hawk and just like ride, and it's a.
They don't go fast.
They don't go fast. Yeah. But
There's a hang glider unlockable.
Oh, is there?
yeah, I couldn't find that.
You gotta beat it on like.
Yes, I'm not there. Oh yeah, here's just a little bit more. This is, which Colossus is this? Oh, this is the one that had his tail in a trap. And I just noticed like this shadow along the wall looks a whole lot like the bridge that you go over in the beginning of the game. It's just a shadow cast by this lantern, but it just creates this like little shadow here. And this is some more of like it looks very Mayan with the wheel, but it's just sort of stripped of like the rich like animal carvings that you'd see on like a Mayan wheel, just like making it a little more sterile and otherworldly. Yeah, we've got this guy. He's a big old gecko, and sort of echoing like the little geckos that you see around. What you do is you lure him up top and you loosen his grip by shooting his little feet. And he falls down on his back and you just impale him mercilessly. See, and about halfway through, you're starting to have visions of her waking up. But so far there's no response. Like, this game really doesn't give you a lot of hope. Like, for most of it, you're like, maybe this won't work. That's, yeah. Yeah, that's where I first noticed, like, I found myself, I have it zooming in on his character model, like, as soon as I got control of it again. And I think I have. Oh, that was just a sweet trick I did. I jumped off this shrine onto the horse. It was real sweet. Yeah, and then we've got this giant, this is flame-throwing tortoise in the desert, and this is where I crapped out in 2005. This is the hardest one. The controls very hard. I had to stop 3 times because my hands were cramping up, because you've got the horseback controls and you're firing arrows at these very little weak points, and you cannot get off the horse or you will get just flamed to death.
I'm surprised at how easy the next one was.
Yeah, what did you think about, like, the difficulty curve? Like, do you think was it, like, sort of a logical difficulty curve?
The first one was easy. The rest were just rolling the dice, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I got a little bit of that, too. I think it was, like, they were more, like, visually tied together than, like, gameplay-wise.
Yeah. I also kind of appreciate that, though, where it isn't, like... I feel like if it was like, each increasing difficulty, I'd be reminded that I'm playing a game, and it'd feel kind of like detract me from.
Yeah, it'd feel a little more artificial. I agree with that. Yeah. So it may very well be intentional, but this is the guy, like, and this time it took me about like 3 tries to get him, but I finally did, because you have to position him over one of these water spouts, which throws him off balance, and then you have to shoot the weak points in his ankles, and then you have to run all the way around to him, climb him, hit a weak point, and then he probably throws you off because he doesn't have a lot of handholds and it takes a long time. But I was very proud of myself for making it past this point. Then we've got the sand serpent. I'm going to zoom through some of these because they're like beautiful, but they're not much. This scared the crap out of me. That's terrifying.
From a gameplay perspective, this does build on the last one, because it's like now you're on the horse, but you have to be like looking back over your shoulder, shooting back at him. Whereas the last one, you were like shooting on your horse, but like running in the direction you're shooting. So there are like
there's a little skill progression.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a curve there where it is.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, this is kind of the same thing, but
I guess the tortoise was the first one that you needed your horse for?
Yeah, the voices, like, if you keep getting flamed, the voices are eventually like, get on your horse. Like, if you keep screwing up, eventually the game, like, will trigger the Dormine voices to be like, hey, maybe try the horse, look for its weak point. And sometimes it's, like, more sarcastic than helpful. I found, but sometimes it does, like, it just, like, gives you that little spark here. It's like, where this one, it's like, yeah, you gotta get on your horse, and then I think it was like, aim for its eyes. And that did end up working. Let's see. I've got another one, and this is where my vertigo kicked in. Because the camera, of course, is like, oh, here's a beautiful steep incline, and just lurches forward. And you get sort of the scale. That's Arco up there, your horse. You're all the way at the bottom of this pit. And this boss was interesting. This is, yeah, it's almost like a jaguar boar sort of combination. And I got some very, like, like the mine, like, jaguar sort of vibes off of it. And it's the first one, it's very interesting, that kind of shows an emotion. It's afraid of fire. So eventually you're trying to, like, chase it around. It's chasing you, it's smacking to the ground, and the voices give you the idea that it's afraid of fire. Like, it's got... And so you grab this flaming stick, and just holding it in front of it, it cowers. And it slowly just backs over the edge of this cliff, and you just impale it. So that I thought that was a kind of an interesting turning point too, where it's like you have it sort of showing something like an emotion. Just more... At this point, the world's looking, like, pretty messed up. You got these storm clouds gathering, colors sort of leaching out. This beautiful forest area.
That was cool because in the intro, I don't remember it from the original, that, like, when Dorman appears, there's that thunder, there's that storm cloud and that thundercrack. So, like, as you're like, I looked up and there was these clouds gathering, you're like, oh, I've seen that before.
Yeah. And you almost, I think I don't know if you hear the thunder yet, but yeah, it's a definite, like, visual cue that what you are doing is related to this Dorman fella. So we have, now this was, like, a really weird one. It's another late Colossus, but this was, like, now they're starting to get a little less, like, animalistic and more like these weird fusions, because it's got these sort of ox horns, it's got this, like, amphibious body, and then it's got this crown of teeth around its top skull, which you can hit and sort of steer it to these platforms from which you can attack it. So it's like,
this is a foreshadowing.
Yeah. And then at this point, you find out you are not alone. You recognize this. It's the mask from the intro. This is Lord Eamon and his men. And Dorman at one point says, "Thou art not alone. Let's hurry this up." And this is when, I was able to get a good zoom in on Wonder here, and you just, especially with, like, the HD, you can really tell. He's got sort of these, like, black veins creeping up his face. He's looking pale. He's got sort of, like, his lips look kind of, like, dried. So, like, whatever's happening to him every time he kills a Colossus is affecting him. And at one point, it's, like, very hard for him to stand up after. But it does look, you got, like, these Pacific redwoods, these, like, the Honduras rainforest, like the Egyptian desert, but it all feels somehow, like, very seamless. Just the sky. This is, the Skyworm you were talking about, the Desert Battle. This is one of my favorite ones. It's like this giant, like, Cthulhu-looking, like, flying antlion sort of whale thing. It's very Miyazaki. If you ever watch the Hayao Miyazaki movies, he has a lot of, like, ships and stuff that are, like, very, like, insect-like and have these sort of, like, paddles on the side.
It's one of the passive ones, right?
It doesn't, he doesn't try to attack you. He's just like circling over these ruins, and you shoot his airbags, and this was one of the more stressful moves, like building on the skills from earlier. You have to jump from your running horse onto one of these sails and scale the sides. This one made me feel bad. Like, look at him go down. He wasn't hurting anybody. Like, we're getting towards the end of the game, and it's just like what at this point made you want to, like, go on in this game? And you, like, sort of get, like, what you're doing is bad. Like what's keeping you going as a player?
I'll table that for 1 second.
Yeah.
The note I wanted to make about this one, and this is probably my favorite of the Colossi boss.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is that moment where you jump from your horse is amazing onto the wings. This is one of the weird ones where I thought about the origins of this game, and especially the creator. I can't believe I forget his name right now.
Ueda.
Yeah. This looks like Panzer Dragoon, and Ueda did work on some Saturn games, and like the other weird connection is all of Ueda's games and all of the Panzer Dragoon games are like kind of the only games that have made up languages. So there's like these weird touches of like the era in which he came up, and like this boss was where I was like, oh yeah, like that's kind of that's where he's kind of influenced by like these ruined worlds and these giant flying creatures. So.
Yeah, because I think he said in interviews, like, it's hard to find interviews with these guys.
Oh,
yeah, they don't like to talk about their work very much. But he said that when he made, like, Eco and Shadow of the Colossus and Last Guardian, he didn't mean to, like, make it kind of a trilogy, but he's like, the same themes just, like, sort of, like, kept coming up in his subconscious, whether it was from his childhood or books he'd read, movies he'd seen, like, and I find that interesting. But yeah, you said, like, Panzer Dragoon, like Miyazaki, almost like some Dune, like kind of like sandworm kind of stuff. It's just, they are like almost like dream creatures. So here you see that like the trophies are kind of disruptive, but they do give you like little hints, like signs amidst the storm. Like there's a storm a-coming.
You asked why you kept playing, but like,
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to see why he'd done all these awful things. like he's already killed all these things.
Right? It's like you're in it this deep. Why not see it to the end, right?
Sure.
I also think that's really interesting as far as like potentiality of video games as medium, in like the language of video games as a medium. That's kind of a inherent part as far as like finishing it's kind of something you do. Like you don't, like even if a movie's bad, generally speaking, you don't walk out like halfway through the movie, which is kind of interesting contextually.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's like it has a pretty strong narrative arc that if you fulfill certain I don't know, missions or things that will lead to some climax, whereas some games that are really like open world like Myst, it's like, well, what are you supposed to do? So,
Yep.
You also can't leave.
Yeah.
Try. It's like if you go to the bridge and try to walk back,
the wind, right?
The wind will knock you. Yeah.
Is that right? And that's like a 15-minute
Yeah.
each
It's
way.
like, yeah, because then you're like, oh, I can walk on the bridge. I'll try to leave, and then like it literally won't let you.
Yeah, it's like a Buster Keaton sketch or something. Like you're just getting like tossed back, and that's echoed a little bit later in the game too. But yeah, and then there's this enemy where this is the first time. I'm gonna zoom along here so we don't keep you too long. Where like a city is mentioned, like that a civilization is alluded to, and this like is the first construct where you see where it's like people could actually have lived here at one point, and it's got kind of that Cambodian jungle vibe here. Lots of spires and this tile, and then you know it's pretty desolate looking, and then you see these like, what do these look like?
Channels.
Like channels? Yeah, like aqueducts, like for carrying water through like a city. Like this could have been a seat of their civilization. I thought that was a neat detail, because like none of these places really felt lived in until I saw that. Like that's like something beings did to like, you know, make this place livable. I thought that was interesting. And you have yes, you have another dog, but this one's more of a boar. Or no, I mean the other one was kind of a boar. This one's more of a bulldog. The gameplay on this one was really interesting.
This is the smallest one, right?
Is this one of this? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but he's tenacious. I thought I think, like you said, it's interesting that they sort of vary in size.
He's similar to the one that's scared of the fire, which you find in like the desert fortress
area,
area, which is like also another place that looks like humans could live in.
Yeah, it's also interesting. They're both sort of guarding something. Yeah, that maybe like they were modeled on something that like interacted with humans or something. Like maybe it was created to be like a temple guardian, or is modeled on like a dog that would use to like guard something. It's
both of them you have to defeat with the environment, like fire or the sort of collapsing city, versus like just your bow and arrow or climbing and stabbing them.
Yeah, so it brings into like sort of like like your environmental puzzle skills.
It's interesting they chose to do that with the smallest ones. As far as like, I feel like the smallest ones intuitively would be the easiest to like defeat.
Oh yeah, this guy, he knocked me all over the map. And he gets like one of the biggest set pieces sort of in the game, and they are like set pieces. They're like little movie sets. Like
which set piece?
Oh, just like
these collapsing.
Well, just like this whole city, because you're like going all around this city, just sort of having him knock over columns so you can get further and further until. And he's, this is when I was just getting tossed around by him. He's a tough guy. I had to go hide. And and eventually, like, he just brings the whole city down on himself. Yeah, and you jump up, stab him. And then here's another one. It acts as a sentry to a destroyed city. So, kind of hinting that maybe the Colossi or something like them, like, existed before the Sealing of Doorman in some form. Like, maybe they weren't created just for this, that maybe they had purposes before that were, like, sort of, requisitioned to seal Doorman. Like, maybe this was, like, sort of this civilization's technology was creating these, like, living golems. Let's see. That's just another... Oh, and this is just me entering a forbidden zone, aka below a waterfall where the geometry wasn't fully finished. And I got stuck here and had to restart. But now we're back, getting towards the end here. And this is a beautiful, I keep calling them sets, but they really are. They're like big old movie sets, and like, what does this architecture sort of remind you of?
Like Romanesque.
Roman? Yeah, what I noticed was these arches. They're in groups of 8. There's 16 on each side, so it's like you've got sort of like numbers, and like it looks a lot like the hall where the statues are. So it's sort of like kind of, and this is, I believe, like the second to the last Colossus, so it's sort of like bringing everything back around visually in a way that I really like. Like when I noticed, I was like, hey, I wonder if there's 8 arches on either side, and there were, and I was like, oh, dope.
It looks like a Colosseum again.
It does. Yeah.
Like maybe people would joust or something. I don't know. I mean, the viewing area is on the side, but it's a long stretch where some action would happen.
Football, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a sport.
Football. But yeah. And then you have like this guy, which I believe is the second largest Colossus. Like that's a hand coming up over that gorge. And this is a big mad fella. He's got almost like it almost looks like a no theater mask. Yeah. Like a kabuki sort of actor's like grimace. He's definitely a warrior. But even he doesn't like getting stabbed in the elbow. And eventually he comes tumbling down, and Dorman is getting very excited. The ritual is nearly over. Thy wish is nearly granted. Make haste, for time is short. So Dorman's feeling pressure from whatever, like, there's something coming that worries them.
Other humans are noticing the storm, maybe.
Well, it's like you notice like that group of, yeah, you can probably sense those humans coming. So just a few more quiet moments. So you know what's coming if you've played this game. And then we've got this keyhole door. Just unlocking the very last area, and then you get to this gap.
What's cool is you can go anywhere in the game from the start except here.
Yeah. Like this is the, only place that's just sealed off until the time is right.
Can you kill the Colossi in any order? It's
No,
just...
no,
No, you can't.
It won't be there.
Okay.
No, it's yeah, I think I remember trying that in like 2005, and it's just like they just didn't trigger, like they were dormant. So yeah, you get to this gap, you can't quite, it's kind of wide, can't quite jump it on your own, so who do you call? Arco. And it doesn't work out too good for her. Now how did,
I sacrificed one.
yeah, like how did this, like, for those who play, like, affect you emotionally?
I was really strong it's just you and your horse. And you build such a bond with it. I know you have the option to call your horse to you when you need it to come to you. As well, you use it for the bosses as well. You build such a bond with it, gameplay wise and story wise. It really caught me off guard when that happened.
Yeah, no, it's, the game totally sets you up, because this is the only living being that you're really interacting with, unless you're, like, jumping on a hawk or shooting a lizard. Like, even Mono, like, I eventually just stopped checking in on her, because sometimes after every time the character would resurrect, I would run over and see, like, oh, is she breathing a little? Is her color a little different? I eventually kind of forgot about her. But this, messed with me. Because, like, and you can see, like, Wander, too. Like, this is the first, like, except from the beginning when he's sort of mourning Mono, this is, like, the first time he's, like, showing emotion, and you can tell, like, he looks up in this, it's a very good pathetic fallacy moment where the thundered clouds just break. So you get, like, the feeling that maybe he just got, like, a last burst of, like, motivation to finish this thing, because it's like the heavens are opening up, the storm is here, like, the sky's all broken, and it's just you and this last Colossus. Now this guy's very interesting. He, like, see echoes of a lot of stuff in his design. What did he make us think of? Huh?
It's not on Bald Mountain.
It's not on Bald Mountain. And classic Fantasia. I also got look at this guy, and he's just like throwing fireballs at you. I also got some Tower of Babel vibes. It looks, which is, you know, a nice parable about man's hubris. Just in his skirt, it's like, you can see it's like almost like its own like walled city, and a lot of depictions of the Tower of Babel, it is like this circular, like concentric, like walled city. So again, some of that symbolism that they insist isn't there. So yeah, you're basically like climbing through these crypts to get up to this guy, and then you're at his feet and you realize he's like anchored to the ground. He can't move. And you're just kind of climbing up this guy in the rain, just like a rat, basically.
Those bolts over his feet were...
Yeah, they're like shackles.
Yeah.
He's like a slave. I mean, that's like kind of the vibe I got. Like...
Yeah, it was cool. It was subtle, too. It was like, oh.
Yeah, and you see like these tears are all like chained around him, like he's being like held down, like
he's supposed to not leave.
Yeah,
and well, furthermore, there are barriers around this guy, which means that they probably constructed those to get him to stay put. I don't know. I mean, or like in the effort to get those shackles on him, I guess, or something. I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah, it looks like, because the defenses you get behind, like I don't know, I don't have it in here, but it's like, yeah, they're like sort of human-sized walls around him with like little lookouts, almost like for people to like monitor him, or like, and they kind of do lead you like right up to his feet. So I don't know if it was like during his construction or during like. Maybe he was constructed and then he was so powerful he had to be like tied down. It's very interesting. It leaves it ambiguous, and there's like all sorts of echoes in like the architecture around him. Like you see like the wrought iron from the water level. You see the arches from the desert. It's just, it all kind of like ties together.
Maybe he was constructed for a different purpose before he was inhabited by Dormir, and so then they had to like restrain him.
I got something.
He was like too powerful to be free roaming.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yep.
I've never thought about the game this way, and this idea that the Colossus were built before Dorman. This is really good. Like, do you think? Because it's always this idea of like Dorman is this terrible thing that happened, and this is why we've had to destroy. Like he destroyed the land. Like, and you bring up the Tower of Babel. Do you think whoever these people were, they brought this on themselves? Like Dorman didn't just appear. Dorman is the end point of whatever they were doing.
Whatever they were harnessing, maybe, to create these things.
I was thinking earlier when we were talking about this like civilization that existed there, the architecture and all of that. You know, you never find any like ruined towns or ruins, you know, like life almost, things of life. It seems like each thing that's built is a temple to something there. It's like it serves a purpose for whatever they were worshipping, and so everything in this forbidden land was very, you know, whoever these people were. Maybe that, you know, like that's the cataclysm happened. They brought it on by this worship that they were performing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
would like
totally
to point out that this particular fight was the only one in which the architecture around the Colossus was clearly designed for the Colossus in mind. So, like, I don't think the civilization before built those pillars for the bull to run into, to knock it down. I don't think they're thinking this is how the guy in the future is going to kill this thing. No, but these barriers that are around this guy are clearly like, well, we need to stop him from killing us because we got to do something here while he's shooting lightning at us.
Yeah. Yeah, so you almost wonder, like, I mean, they keep, like, mentioning, like, guardians and sentries and stuff like this, that this was, some, like, technology they were using that, like, got out of hand or something, or, like, maybe they were binding spirits to clay or something, which never works out well in mythology. Like, you don't do that, and it awoke something terrible. It's very interesting, but this definitely like looks like there's this Colossus who's mostly organic, and then this like sort of like just structure retrofitted around him. And so it's weird. This is this took me like 3 tries. Also, it's a whole like daisy chain of events. You have to jump, like stab his back, jump to his hand, go to the back of his hand, up his arm, into his bicep. It's definitely like, yeah, this is very much a final boss. And then he only really has one glyph, and you just stab it about 20 times, and he's just writhing the whole time, and eventually passes, and you go into the light. And so do you want to watch like part of the very last cinematic here to wrap up the story?
Yeah, I want to see it on PS4.
It's gorgeous. And again, all like you're gonna basically see all the dialogue in the game. Yeah, exit full screen.
I kind of actually like that about this game, that it can be shown in 2 videos essentially.
Yeah, because it's just like an environmental storytelling. I'm like, let me see, second boss, ending, and final boss. We are not gonna go. Oh, it looks like there was an arms race to post this. It's like February 6th, February 7th, February 8th. This is...
First.
Yeah, first post. Here, let me... because the sound's going to be important on this one. Also, highly recommend getting this soundtrack if you can. So yeah, obviously it's available on YouTube. Yeah, so this is like immediately after the final boss battle, like this cutscene is triggered. Yeah, that might be it.
It's also just very quiet.
It's just, yeah, it's not got the boom bass.
That's what's cool is like we've been talking about like this advanced civilization. You can see that this civilization is primitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't rebuild whatever this was.
Yeah, this looks older than pretty much everything else. That nice gothic organ.
The organ only ever plays when one of the idols falls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when something involving the ritual happens, sort of. Oh, don't you? Grammarly, yeah, I'm gonna skip you in a couple of seconds, but yeah, I'm not paying for YouTube.
Ad block.
But yeah, you can see kind of the walls.
It's a graveyard.
Is it?
Well, those are the walls that you sort of use to get to him. But it does, everything here looks very sepulchral. Sepulchral? I've never had to say that word out loud. Yeah, not looking good. Not this time.
I noticed that there is no line. If you look at it closely, there's no line from the last Colossus into the sky.
You know those pillar of light?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe when we're all dead, they cease to shoot them up?
Is that how it always comes down?
Yeah.
Yeah, just very unceremonious, just like blank. And it's implied this is what happens every time. You just get splatted. Mm-hmm. And he's got the little horns, little baby horns. Yeah, this is like the first time you see other humans and they just shoot them. The music that you heard in the very beginning when these guys first spawned, that bum 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 bum. That's a he. Yeah, so this, like, at this point, you are controlling Dormine. How did that feel?
Really cool.
It felt really cool? You liked it? You like that feeling?
Awesome.
Like that's smashing.
It made me sad you can't actually win this fight.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, why is he so slow?
It made me feel bad for the Colossi, knowing how slow they had to control themselves.
Yeah, you get kind of like a lot of the Colossi. Yeah, their reaction time was very slow.
Like, no wonder I was able to kill him.
Yeah.
Do you see any weak spots on this guy?
I mean, it's kind of implied that he's like not fully formed yet. That like maybe Wander's body like isn't as robust enough a medium for him to fully manifest. So he's like probably not totally like.
He did say he borrowed the body.
Yeah, so he's like using the body as like a vessel or a conduit or a medium. But yeah, this may not be his like total like his final form.
I think it's kind of frustrating that just as far as like narrative device, right? I mean, I feel like the best option as far as Dormion's interest would be to just leave rather than like try and kill the guys, especially if they're trying to seal him and just be like, oh, I should leave.
Well, he is like the way you move him is towards the exit.
Yeah, I guess.
But
I'm just thinking more so like his attempt to kill them rather than it might be faster to just kind of like get out.
I was wondering how he gets up all those stairs. It's too big.
He's got those little spider legs.
He's a faster climber than it's
So you see he's got the ancient sword.
You're cold!
He very much looks like that tunnel of light. You can see. Well, you have to like. Is it okay if I talk about this? Or we'll talk about it later. This is so sad. I kept this going. It felt like I feel like Journey is a game that definitely took a lot from this. It felt like the very end of Journey where you're just like postponing going into the light, but you just gotta go.
But you're like pulling on the grip meter. That's like
Yeah.
the whole thing, the whole game.
But nothing.
Yeah.
No grip strong enough. Yeah, you can see it's sort of.
I mean, it's great if you want the bridge to fall at some point.
Yeah, this is what I took as like the contingency plan.
So, Simon, I've got a question.
Yeah.
So about 10-15 years ago, Roger Ebert said video games can never be art. And everybody said...
And every 5 years, we must resurrect the argument again. to keep the ancient beast sealed.
But at the time, Shadow of Colossus was the big one. Everybody was like, "But Shadow of Colossus."
Yeah, and he was like, "I don't know. I don't play video games. I'm a little guy. I just said it for attention." Like,
Is that what he said?
I think Ebert actually did play a game.
He did.
I'm sure he played a game at some point.
It's
like
Tetris.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
There's one computer game he played.
Yeah, it was like a point. It was like a. No, it was a.
Right.
It's like one of those 2D adventures. But it was like a Myst-like kind of.
It was a trippy game.
But I'm wondering if you think this game holds up as the pinnacle of games as an artistic medium that you can point to if anybody thinks that that's not the case.
It's. I feel like to people who know games, it is, because it's almost like an inversion of like what a lot of games are. Like, instead of being overpopulated, it's sparse. It's, instead of being hyper colorful, it's muted. Instead of having a ton of fetch quests, like all that stuff's optional. It's almost like playing with the language of video games in a way that's interesting, but maybe from an outsider's perspective would be boring or like kind of.
I feel like, in a weird way, I feel like a lot of people point to this as like, oh yeah, this is like the game that proves that games are art, because it's very much like a movie, like it's a very cinematic game. Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't have a ton of the like actual stuff that a lot of people associate with video games.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of people use it as an example, as like a sort of gateway for people who maybe would be more reluctant to be like, you know, people are like, blah, games are for dummies, and they're about your brain.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more like you can kind of start to convince them, and then it's like, and now here, let me show you all of these other things. But it's you know, I feel like
it's also something that doesn't make you what's special about the medium.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's I mean, it's like.
I don't know. I think it does. I think like the feeling of being dormant, at least those last few minutes.
True.
And also like the feeling of being sucked in, knowing that you're just gonna end up in that pool of water. That's something that I mean, those specific moments are the only points I can really point at, but those are powerful ones.
I feel like that's why it suggests it's like a gateway.
Yeah.
Because it's got just enough that if there's someone who is like, I don't like video games are stupid, video games aren't art, you would use this maybe to sort of like as their baby steps into getting them actually into more sort of main mechanic heavy games, or what we think of as like a more traditional game.
Also, not even for people that like think that video games are dumb, but I think even for like video games as a community, I think this is a good, because like even though I don't think that I would use this as my crux of the argument that like video games are art, but I think that it shows the potential for video games as art. As far as, even though like this game's really cool, it's still so heavily entrenched in like tropes of video games.
Yeah, well, it's just like how, like, you know, so many great movies like are entrenched in like the language of cinema, or you know, how many comics are like entrenched in the language of comics. It's like, I feel like video games is a medium that art is created with. It's not like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't even have that argument, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think the like concept of like art and not art is kind of silly. But as far as,
But yeah, like examples of video games that you think transcend into like the genre,
High art.
like high R, yeah, capital ART. Yeah, I think it's in there. It's got that crossover appeal.
I think a lot of the arguments that were made is that it made people feel things.
Yeah.
I played this game. I had feelings about it.
Yeah, just like this slideshow of the corpses you left behind, with this sort of like almost like cinematic, like look, you got like the fake like film effect.
I think it like there's very little it tries to do and fails to do. So I think that's like this was the first game where I couldn't point at anything like horrendous. That was just like a glaring problem. Like it was not. I enjoyed playing. It was fun to play. There were other games that I would consider high art, but were also like just not fun to play, and everything else I liked about it. Or like maybe it would just handle dialogue in a really clunky and stupid way or something.
Also, I think it's noteworthy that it's not compelling in a traditional sense, as far as like if you're playing like Call of Duty or like Spelunky or something. It's kind of like I feel like it's a similar drive forward, where with this game you're continuing to play it, but for I don't really know like what word specifically, but it's a different like presence, I guess.
Yeah, I think someone was talking, it's almost like momentum or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you get to a certain point and you're like, I have to see this through. Like, yeah. Instead of like, I gotta get the biggest score on the gamer boards.
But I think ultimately this couldn't be a movie. Like, you wouldn't feel the same way if you weren't complicit in the killing of these colossi. You wouldn't get anything from this as a passive medium. Like, that's why this is very different from a lot of like AAA gaming, where it's like, yeah, it could be like a wild like roller coaster ride, but that could also translate to a 90-minute summer blockbuster. You know, this doesn't do that at all.
Yeah, it's a totally different pace. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, just watching this and the ending thing again, it's like made me think kind of what really sticks out in this game is like, you know, a lot of games very like black and white. There's an evil to defeat, and you are the good, good person.
Who's that baby?
To defeat that evil. And this game twists that a lot. You know, it's at the end there. Those soldiers, you're trying to beat them down and fight them. Yet, like, you're kind of the villain in this game in a sense, and they're just trying to seal away this evil. They're trying to protect the world more or less, and you're doing this out of like love, more or less. You're trying to like...
Is it love or is it selfishness?
I know, exactly. It's like, the crazy things people do for love sometimes. Like, the theological things done for love. And it's,
well, the thing that I
kind
like...
of plays with that.
One thing I like is that she was actually sacrificed, so he could be a bad guy by releasing Dorman, but you don't actually know much about Dorman at all.
I always took it that Eamon and his men are the ones that sacrificed her, that killed her in the first place. Because he's like some sort of like high priest or something. Like, he's the keeper of the lore. Like, if she had some sort of cursed fate, he may have made the decision to like...
Well, this is her cursed fate.
Yeah. Well, she's, she's...
leave her there.
Yeah, she's not.
Like, it's this weird self-fulfilling prophecy. I think what's interesting that really came out of the discussion we had about this, like, everybody's like, oh, it's like you feel these emotions, like it's this big reversal of gaming expectations. I think the thing that strikes me about this game, and I'm hard-pressed to think of a lot of examples before this, is there's so much subtext to this game.
It's so dense. Like, I didn't get to nearly all of it. You saw I had to like skip through a lot of stuff. I wanted to like...
Right, but the big brave thing of this game is to not put flashing arrows at everything. It's like the world, like, you finally hit a point technologically where you could have this intricately constructed world and like not have to be like, see what, like, we...
Hey, listen.
Yeah, or even that, like, I've thought about this game for the last 15 years or whatever, and only today I'm like, oh wait, what is the order of things that happen in this world? Because any other game before this time would have told you.
Yeah, like in the beginning. Like,
yeah, or like midway through you get a reveal, and this is like, well, there are hints that like you don't need to know.
Yeah, it's like this at the end. Like, this is the first time you see like a creature that could like conceivably be part of like an actual like biome.
Yeah, I think this is the first mammals even.
But this might like, because before we're operating on like untrustworthy protagonists, right? So like this might be like an actual good result from the stuff we see nature sort of taking back.
Yeah, it's a very like, yeah, it's a kind ending.
Well, you can actually visit this place in game.
Mm-hmm.
This is the garden on top of the temple, and there's a fruit in the tree. Most of them raise your max health, but this one, if you get it, it decreases your max health to like a sliver.
Forbidden fruit in the garden.
Yep.
And so it makes it basically like you can still beat the game, but like it just makes it really hard for you, which is interesting because I think most games like when you find a like Easter egg like that, they're gonna like try to buff the player.
It's gonna give you big head mode or something.
Yeah, be like, okay, we know like you're so into the game, you put in extra effort, we'll give you like, something to make it easier, and this does the reverse.
But yeah, the forbidden fruit in the garden is probably the most smack you in the face symbolism in the game.
Yeah.
Well, it's hidden. Like it's, I mean, you have to basically collect every lizard to increase your grip strength, so you can actually scale the damn
Yeah.
thing.
Instead of treasure up there, it's forbidden fruit.
Right. And then it just sort of slaps you. It's kind of like if you go all the way back on the bridge, right, with the wind that sort of definitely programmed for that instance, but it's sort of a slap in the face where it's like we see your effort, but we don't acknowledge it.
And then it comes back in. It's like whatever force is pushing you back across the bridge is pulling you into that pillar of light.
But it doesn't block it off. Like a lot of games would just be like, okay, invisible wall.
Yeah.
This doesn't do that.
Yeah, there's like a reason. Yeah, there's a
feel like
reason you're
that's
trapped
a
here.
lot more respect for the player to like make in-game reasons than just like, oh, I hit a wall.
Yeah.
This is the imagery that like
And this
Last
is-
Guardian begins with.
Yeah, and this is how this game also
yeah.
begins.
Right.
Is this hawk, and it's in the night, and that's when he's stealing her away from. So it's. It's charming.
It's really cute. I actually like that they kept it. 'Cause
It
I
works.
feel like it's such a.
It's part of the feel.
I mean, I remember even in 2005 or whatever, playing it with my friends, and we were all like, "Really, papyrus?"
Yeah.
I like the
In beta, it was Comic Sans. So be thankful.
I think, I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh no.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was not Comic Sans.
That would have
What
totally
would the game
changed
be
the
like
tone.
if it was still Comic Sans? That would be pretty.
Comic Sans never been used in a video
Oh,
game.
good in the worst.
I don't know. Yeah,
I
like
just started emulating. I haven't
I feel like
Comic Sans
I feel like
anymore.
if you have like
There's
an
a
all-powerful
vintage
shadow being, it would
Undertale.
probably speak in
It's
Comic
the only game
Sans.
I
I'm gonna do font here. But yeah, so any like
that use this one. Comic Sans.
any like ending thoughts? What do we think of this game? Rob?
So there's a couple moments, and I wonder if everybody else had this moment. And I have two that stick out in my mind of my playthrough of this. And one is I always imagined that there was a giant tree in the game, and I can never recreate it, so I think I just like created a false memory. But the other big one, the real big one for everyone is, because you create this memory of this land, and it's great to see it in this incredible fidelity. There's the biggest reveal, and I'm talking about the subtext. The biggest reveal in the game, it's just there. The beach. You guys found the beach, right? When I think it's when you're going to the Turtle Colossus or the Sandworm Colossus, you'll walk by a beach, and it's the beach at the end of Ico. And
It is. I haven't played Ico, so I didn't pick that up. I caught that it was like
there's
something
a,
special.
There's like a white sand beach, yeah, and nothing is paid. Like, hey, do you remember this? Do you recognize this? But it's the same beach at the end of Ico, and you just walk by it, and it's like the whole cosmology is in that moment that's completely skippable. Like, there's nothing down there, and like they tell you nothing. They don't tell you like, hey, pay attention. It's just there, and you have to have beaten Ico to recognize it.
Yeah, and I was going to mention like the horn motif comes up in these games, and both when he's in his sort of cursed form here, and then when he's reborn as a wee bab.
Yeah. So kind of the conjecture is that you're like, oh, this is a hopeful ending. The weird conjecture is she's the queen in Ico. Because she's it's like she's reborn and she lives forever trapped here. And like Eamon's final lines is like, if something could live here, and it's like, well, she does, so what happens, No, again, we don't know, but like those are the hints that people put together to be like, this is the prequel to Ico.
Yeah, I've also heard, like, I remember theories going around that, like, you see, when he's reborn, he also has these little horns,
Right.
and the boy in Ico, like, it is known at that point that being born with horns is a curse.
Right.
So it's implied that maybe this is an ancestor, or even if it's not the same world, is under sort of the same sort of curse.
Yeah.
Like,
It's in the
there's
lore
some of the
that
same.
if you're born with horns, you're a cursed
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
I wonder how the Last Guardian ties into this. Like the cat, the big cat thing. Is that like one of the colossi that survived or something?
I haven't played that one yet. I'm going to jump into that next.
That one they haven't figured out a connection.
I think it's like its own separate.
It just kind of, like, I think he said, like, he didn't set out for them to all be connected, but he likes it that people are making connections and forming their own theories. Like, he's like, like, there was like a Eurogamer reviewer who was like, hey, what do the horns mean? He's like, I like people guessing. Like, it's fun when they guess. Yeah, he's like, I like to hear the stories they make up. So I feel like that's part of it too. It's left ambiguous, and maybe it's not like, like you see those intricate trees of like Zelda lore where it's like this like Hyrule is connected to this Hyrule 400 years later, and it's like, I don't think anything like that's happening. But there are repeating motifs throughout his work. But yeah, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So I have two announcements. One, this is a totally free event. We do take donations, so if you do want to put money in the hat, you can, but you're not obligated to. Nobody's judging you. You can totally just like pass it forward, and it doesn't matter. And you can just hand it around. The other thing is Hunter, what's happening next month?
So, I'm giving a talk on Yume Nikki, which I'm really excited about. I'm also right now studying a lot of like avant-garde like image and sound and kind of tying that in and thinking a lot about like materiality of video games, like potentiality.